Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Davidson. I work for Writing West Midlands and I am Project Director of the West Midlands Readers Network. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Librarians Virtual Toolkit. It was, of course, going to be a real space event, but for reasons you're all very well aware of, it's become an online event. And as a result, we have considerably more people involved, which is wonderful. I'll be jointly hosting the afternoon's discussions, which cover a wide range of subjects concerned with libraries and readers. And my co-host is the project manager of the West Midlands Readers Network, and she is Angela Hickin. And I'm now going to ask Angela to introduce herself and say a few words. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you very much, and a warm welcome to all of those who are watching. I'm absolutely delighted to be representing the West Midlands Readers Network. It's a long established and very well valued partnership project that's funded by Arts Council England and also by local library authority subscriptions. Now, I've been in this part-time project manager role since the end of last year, and having worked as a librarian for many years with a background in reader development, and then as a literature development officer working across arts and libraries and museums, it is really wonderful to be working for a project that has at its heart connecting readers to one another and also to writers. And although this afternoon's toolkit, its programme of panels and of discussions has been devised by and for the West Midlands Readers Network, it really does focus on lots of different work strands, and it encompasses the national picture. And we hope what offers inspiring ideas that can be replicated and discusses issues that affect us all, that continue to concern us all in these interesting times and these challenging days. But as Jonathan said, by bringing a condensed conference online in this way today, it's opened it out to library staff from very far afield. So we're welcoming viewers from Manchester to Medway, Somerset to Stockton. It's been really nice to seeing you say hello in the live chat. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. But for now, I'm going to hand back to Jonathan to introduce the first of our guests.
Thank you very much, Angela. Yes, and again, a warm welcome to all of you from around the UK who've joined us. We would have loved to have welcomed you to the West Midlands in real space, and we hope you get an opportunity to come and see us at some point in the future. But for the moment, it's great to have you with us. And thanks and welcome also to all those library staff and friends and colleagues from the public library authorities in the West Midlands. And we're really pleased that you're here to hear these conversations and join in through the chat room. So I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker, as you'll know from the timetable, is Isabel Hunter. Isabel is Chief Executive of Libraries Connected, the organisation that represents all public library services in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Welcome, Isabel. We asked Isabel to give a short presentation on the opportunities we face in these interesting times. I imagine that she's been rewriting it fairly frequently over the last few weeks as things change. The times are ever more interesting, but I'm confident that Isabel will be giving us some ideas and inspiration to take us through into what is going to be a very challenging future. So I'm going to absent myself shortly from the screen, but not before I welcome Isabel and thank her for giving her presentation. Isabel, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much. And it's lovely to be here. Yeah, and it would have been even more lovely to be here in person, but I know that before too long, we'll be able to get back a bit more to normal, and I will be out and about visiting libraries and really enjoying that. So I'm just going to say a few minutes talk about the power of reading, powered by the power of libraries. So actually, although we've had a few really, really hard months, I think these months have been amazing for reading. During the first lockdown, the thing that happened to reading was that it absolutely boomed. So I spent a few minutes last week just Googling to see what research had been done into reading and book selling during the first lockdowns. Actually, there's loads of bits and pieces of research out there. So I'm just going to throw at you a few of the really encouraging stats that have come out from some of those bits of research. So firstly, Nielsen's, their research showed that 41% of people said they were reading more in lockdown, and had also nearly doubled the amount of time they spent reading books, up to 6 hours a week. The Reading Agency, their work spotlighted that there's a spike amongst young people, and again, more than half or almost half of young people said they were reading more than before lockdown. There's a website called The Conversation, and their research, interestingly, looked at what people were doing with reading, and 60% of people were discussing reading with others, especially on social media. And I guess during lockdown, once you talked about what you're going to have for lunch and what you've done in the garden, reading became a really important way of conversational topic and way people could connect with friends and family. And the Literacy Trust, I thought their research really interesting. They looked at the way that children were reading, and more than a quarter of children, nearly 30% of children, said they were enjoying reading more than during lockdown. And sometimes for children, that really important thing of enjoyment is forgotten. So during lockdown, it was quite clear that people really turned to reading. They read for entertainment, for distraction, for solace, to make connections with others, to provide themselves with information, and to support their education and the education of their children. And libraries are right at the heart of that, making sure that people could connect with reading, could get books and ebooks into their hands. So although the doors of libraries closed on March the 23rd, libraries worked so hard to stay open for business. So e-lending surged, and our data thinks that e-lending has surged, loans have surged by about 146% since lockdown, and that's a level that's remaining very high, isn't starting to drop off so much. And that was partly because libraries enabled online joining, and this was also able to attract people who were totally new members. They hadn't even been members of the existing library service before, so very exciting. 60% of services were able to keep their home library service going. And there are also really innovative new partnerships with charities and food banks and other council services to make sure that books and resources reached families and children in need. I really love the way that libraries were so innovative in setting up online groups and activities. So I think story times, rhyme times, things for children were in that first wave, soon attracting thousands of viewers, incredible audience, and then followed by more and more activities for adults, including reading books and book reviews. So it wasn't just a passive watching experience, it was really trying to think about online participation, two-way connection and communication between libraries and their users, and connecting that library community around books and reading. And then from July, once doors were opened, we then saw that big wave of order and collect services coming in. And very interestingly, the great success of some of the pre-selected reads, especially for children, families really enjoyed taking their bag home, unpacking it, finding out what was inside, stimulating children to read different and new types of books. And then, of course, also from July, we saw the doors opening, people coming back inside to borrow. I just wanted to share with you a lovely quote that a library was sent by one of its users. Many thanks to the member of library staff who very kindly delivered books to my mother. My mother loves reading, and being without books is a great loss in her life as they keep her mentally agile and help her well-being. I know you're all working in very difficult circumstances, so taking the time to get a good collection of books together and deliver them was really appreciated. So, there were hundreds and hundreds of really heartfelt messages back to libraries from their users, really, really talking about how much they valued it and the way that the library and books and reading had kept them going through lockdown and those difficult days. So I think in some ways, lockdown, it was an incredibly difficult experience for libraries, but libraries really rose to the challenge and kept trying to power that reading, keep that going. But obviously, there are many challenges ahead. How can we sustain and grow that interest in reading that was spiked by lockdown, and what's going to happen to it through the second lockdown? So there are some immediate challenges ahead over the next few months and year. So firstly, ongoing constraints on access to library buildings. Now, I wrote that line a couple of weeks ago. It's obviously taken on a great new significance this morning, because of course now we're in a situation where we can't let people in to do browsing and select their own books. But even when this month's over, and even the other side of Christmas, it's likely that there'll still be some constraints on access, and it will be some time before we can get back to being able to fling the doors open and have that wonderful, welcoming, warm space with activities and connections between people. That time will come back, but it is still some way off. So we have to continue thinking about innovative ways of working around that. And then once we can get that back, I think we're going to have to work very hard to sort of remarket and reconnect to make sure we're getting people back in. Another big challenge is about the cost of providing good ebook selections alongside the hard copy. I'm sure, as all of you know, the licensing model in this country makes ebooks expensive, and there isn't the selection available that there is for hard copy. So there is a large piece of work ahead. How can we work with publishers to find different licensing models that benefit authors and publishers and libraries and readers, benefit that whole sort of ecology around the publishing industry? There's also another challenge that again has been a lot in focus over discussions this summer, and the need for more diverse content within library stock selection that reflects more diversity in authors, and also responds to the interests and the needs of our communities. So again, that's a big sort of publishing industry thing, but libraries need to play their part in that. So although we're certainly not out of the pandemic now, we're certainly not out of the difficult part, I think we are far enough along to see what might be coming the other side. Where do we want to get to as we reformulate and recalibrate and develop library services that can really meet the needs of that post-pandemic society? So what we're starting to look at is a library service that needs to be delivering through 3 channels in a very balanced way to meet the needs of different people. So firstly, to develop the services inside the library walls, so access to physical books, activities, events, ways that people inside the library can connect with each other and with the library service and with the world of reading and ideas. Work in that physical space, I think we all value more than ever, because we've been deprived of communal physical spaces for several months now. Second element is, of course, digital. So those challenges, so we can grow a really good and vibrant and accessible digital offer. So that also means libraries continuing their work around digital inclusion so that more people can benefit from digital activities, ebooks and e-audio. We also need to grow and evolve the work that we do outside the library walls, taking books, resources, and taking the library out deep into communities. So how do we evolve the home library service? What new partnerships can we build to help get books out there into deprived families and deeper into communities? So I don't think those 3 channels of delivery, there's nothing new there. It's the way that libraries have been operating for many years. But what might be new as libraries move forward is the balance between those 3 services, and shifting of resources, development of skills and partnerships, so that each of those elements can be as strong as the other over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So libraries certainly know how to innovate. I think over the past few months, you have just shown yourselves to be the most determined, the most innovative people, to be able to make something really amazing out of absolutely nothing. So, you know, you've certainly proved that. So I know that libraries are up to that challenge of further innovation. So some of the ways I think that can be built on is continuing to develop online activities, and especially that work that's about really understanding that interactive stuff, that participative stuff. And we've been really excited about our first experiments with virtual library tours with Leslie Pierce, which has been a wonderful experience. And I know that we've got some more online virtual tours coming on the back of that. I'm also very interested in development of hybrid events where you might have a small audience and be streaming that event to a much larger audience at home or in different locations. So I think there'll be an awful lot of learning that we can pick up from Wakefield Library, and they've been running a literary festival as a hybrid online and on-site festival. Really exciting work. We've also started to talk more actively to publishers. So the whole library sector's benefited through lockdown from publishers, major publishers, small ones, waiving copyright so that books could be performed online. So really keen to build on that. And I think there's a real opportunity with local bookshops and smaller publishers. You know, they're really squeezed by the lockdown, having to close doors again, not being able to access audiences. So I think they can really see the benefits of working with libraries, and there could be some really interesting work locally that could be of benefit to libraries, bookshops, publishers, and absolutely a benefit to audiences and readers. Also, I think we can capitalise on our national and local relationship with the BBC. So it's been really good working with the BBC through the Novels That Changed the World project. Working with a massive partner like the BBC is difficult. It can sometimes be a bit like getting into bed with a rhino. You know, at any moment it could roll over and squash you. But we've actually got an awful lot out of the BBC, and there's an awful lot there to build on. Again, what the BBC is interested in is the way that libraries can have that really deep and authentic connection with audience in the way that many other, you know, what other channels, what other services can do that. Finally, the thing that we really need to work on ahead, we really need to make sure that people keep reading, keep enjoying it, keep having that fun and that connected experience through it. So I think it's important that we keep the positive message about library services going forward. Once we're out the other side of this month and we start reopening the doors again, there's some very positive shouting, loud shouting we need to do about the importance of the physical library experience alongside the digital. We need to be focusing on what we can do and what we do offer and what pleasure and joy and benefits it brings to people. So I'm very much looking forward to getting the other side of this lockdown and keeping that very strong message going alongside the rest of the library sector. So that's I think I've probably over-exceeded my 5 minutes there.
Well, thank you so much to Isabel Hunter from Libraries Connected for that wonderful opening address. There's plenty of food for thought for us going forward this afternoon. Now, in this first panel discussion, I'm joined by Liz Gardner, who's the Stock Services and Activities Officer at Staffordshire Libraries and Art Service, and by Merca Duxbury, the Library Development Manager at Shropshire Council. Welcome to you both. It's lovely to see you this afternoon.
Thanks, Angela. Lovely to be here.
Thank you.
Now, actually, for this 20-minute session that we've got, I'm actually going to be opening it up to a bit of live chat. So those of you listening to us out there on YouTube, please, if you've got a question for our library guests today, type that into the live chat, and I'll be picking a couple of those up to put to our guests this afternoon. But I'm going to start by asking you both the same question. I'm going to begin with Liz, please. And that's, how did libraries stay in contact with readers and in particular support reading groups during lockdown chapter 1?
Well, Staffordshire Libraries, we've been very innovative, as everybody else has been. We've had a really strong online offer, which we're continually reviewing and developing. In terms of the reading groups, I set up a book chat Facebook group attached to our main Staffordshire Libraries Facebook page. And we've really quickly gone up to about 300 members now. And it's been very good because it's meant that not only the reading group members could be involved and keep talking to each other and widening their circle of like-minded reading friends, but also they've had the chance as well to access some of the offers that we've had and to really just to raise awareness of what's there. Alongside that, I've also been supporting the reading groups with accessing Zoom and other online platforms where they can meet virtually. A lot of our members are older in the reading groups, and some of them were not particularly digitally upskilled. So this has been a great opportunity to support them to access those kind of new technologies, and you know, that's enabled them as well, not just within the reading group but outside of that, to be less socially isolated overall.
Yeah, I was thinking that some of the reading groups must have had to disband, I'm assuming, and not meet up over that lockdown period. So it's about being able to stay connected and libraries helping people, enabling them to do that, whether that's by
Absolutely.
IT assistance. Yeah. And Merca, can you tell us what the situation has been like in your libraries?
Yeah, so it's been very similar to all the other libraries actually, but we've been trying to keep in touch with our reading groups through e-bulletins as well. So we use Gov Delivery, which was really effective. So we have about 490 contacts on there. So it was a really good communication between our reading groups. We've also found different tools, online tools, and encourage groups to join and meet up online, and then show them how they can do it through guiding them to specific links. And we've also had, this was before COVID, we've set up Facebook, Shropshire Libraries Facebook reading group as well, where we've got around 300 members as well, Liz, similar to yours. And some of them, so we currently have 160 reading groups, and I think only about 25 of them couldn't meet up or didn't want to use online meetups, but all the other ones are somehow, it's a combination of between meeting up online and in person. They kept in touch that way. Obviously now it's going to change again for 4 weeks, but we as soon as we could distribute all the reading group sets physically, we've done it with the phase reopening.
Yeah, so during that period, did you sort of have a click and collect service, really, where the reading groups who were associated with the libraries were able to come in and still get some sets?
Yes, yeah. So they were able to come and pick them up as soon as the libraries were allowed to open for click and collect, yeah.
Yeah, and you'll be going to that service again from today?
Yes, yeah, from Monday, yeah.
Yeah. Now, libraries have always had to be places of innovation and participation. So let's turn to something that Liz spoke about briefly, and that's the digital and online offers that as library services you are putting out for readers to get involved with. Liz, can you tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing, working with publishers, with the network and other partners?
Yeah, sure. For the book chat group, we've been working with West Midlands Readers Network, and very much valued the support we've had there with putting on a season of reading, which is a monthly evening chat session with a West Midlands author. And we've had 3 of those so far. We had the last one last night, and we're going to carry on with those until February. On average, we're getting around between sort of 50 and 100 people tuning into those and streaming those, and being very active with asking lots of questions, very interested in what the author's got to say. And also I think they find the quite informal nature of the chat really attractive as well. So it's been a great way to be able to bring authors to that audience virtually, and it's the first sort of formal online author tour that we've done with adults. So it's been great to do that, and as I said, we've really appreciated the support.
Oh, well, it's been a delight doing those in partnership with you, Liz, and those are great audience figures as well, and no doubt will continue to grow as people's confidence towards using IT. I've got a few questions from the live chat actually that I might put to both of you. I want to make sure that we get questions from viewers. So Claire Batista asks, how did Liz help them access Zoom and talk them through it? Was it a phone call to individuals? How did you set that up?
Yeah, it was basically, I put the call out. I know you know we can't offer, because we had to suspend the reading group service in the first lockdown, and we're actually doing it again this time because of the logistics of trying to get the books out to people with the current threshold service. So what I did was I put a call out to all my mailing list of reading groups. We've got over 300 subscribed reading groups in Staffordshire, and basically said, look, if you want to meet in an alternative way, if you're looking at meeting online, and you're a bit concerned about it, don't know how to do it, etc., just get in touch with me and I'll support you as best I can. And a significant number did either came back and said, yes, we're going to, but we're absolutely fine. We know there's somebody in the group who can do Zoom or whatever, and we're perfectly okay. Other people came back and said, oh no, I really want help. And one thing I did when I sent out that first call, I kind of ascertaining how many people were going to be using an online platform, I did put together some simple sort of security and safety online guidelines for them, just about, you know, so that they didn't get Zoom bombed by anything inappropriate, and that it was a nice safe forum for them. So yeah, sometimes it was a phone call, sometimes it was an email. We've got a WhatsApp group as well, so quite often we were chatting on that, to provide support for them. So it was really just finding out what they needed and supporting them as they needed to do it.
Thank you, Liz. And Mirka, is that the same for you, sort of reaching out to readers and finding out what their needs were?
Yeah, so we've set it up in our e-bulletin. So we just put tips and tricks on how to run online book group, which was really good. And also, you know, for people who wanted to share on our Facebook online group as well.
Okay, coming back to Facebook, actually, we've got a question from Sarah Moth here, who asks, Liz, did you moderate your Facebook reading group page?
Yes, it is moderated. I'm a moderator. I'm the main moderator, but there are a couple of other colleagues who also moderate it as well. And to be honest, we set it up with really clear guidelines as to what we expected within the group, using the Facebook parameters for being able to put those in place. And anybody who asks to join has to be approved. And before that approval goes through, they have to have indicated via the Facebook approval page that they're willing to agree to the terms and conditions and behaviour rules really around that group. So we have something in place where if nobody has misbehaved at all, but if somebody had, we have got guidelines there, and we can actually refer back to them and say, you know, we've removed your post or whatever because it contravenes these guidelines. But in terms of sort of moderating it, there really hasn't been anything particular that's been an issue. You know, we're all grown-ups, and you know, the members of the book chat group are really there just to enjoy reading and enjoy all things books and talking about books and just being supportive of each other in challenging circumstances.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think different library authorities will probably be using different platforms, and they'll find out what works best for them. But that's quite often kind of restricted, I suppose, by the IT within your particular council, isn't it?
Yeah.
And somebody asks actually in the group here, Marie Shipley asks, how can we encourage our local authorities to allow us to adopt and use very user-friendly online platforms such as Zoom? I know a lot of local authorities don't. Have you had any experience with trying to push this forward?
Yeah.
Sorry, Liz.
No, go Mirka.
Yeah, so we've had that challenge when we were told that no, we can't use it, can't use Zoom. But after we explained on what we want to achieve by it and what the difference is between using other platforms like Teams, for example, then we were able to set it up.
Yeah, anything to add, Liz?
We don't use Zoom within the county council, within Staffordshire Libraries. We are happy to join Zoom sessions set up by other groups, and obviously external groups can set up their own Zoom sessions, and that's really where I've supported them to do that. For a season of reading, we've used Teams, but because it's a free app anyway that people can download on Google Play or the App Store, it's been really accessible regardless, and we haven't had anybody come back and say, oh, I can't access Teams. So it's, you know, I think you have to work with what you have. I think if you want to try and push the envelope a bit and kind of convince your ICT that you need different tools, as Mirka said, I think if you can make a case for it, and also if you can show some positive examples from other library authorities, and the way that they set things up. So really it's about sharing best practice and then using that as a business case.
Yeah, I think I agree, and these forums allow us to do that as well, doesn't it? To share
Absolutely.
What each library authority is doing, what successes that we've found. So Mirka, what are the plans going forward for your libraries in continuing that connecting library and readers together going forward?
Yeah, so we would like to work more with our local authors as well. So, for example, we've got an author event planned which will be promoted specifically for reading groups, which is local author. She donated set of books as well. So again, it's working with local authors more closely, but also tapping into great organisations like West Midlands Readers Network, Poetry on Loan, for example. So it's kind of tying it all together and promoting love of reading through those organisations. So partnership work, and also sometimes, for example, during the Summer Reading Challenge, we have set up Shropshire Summer Reads, which was open for reading groups as well. So people join in again in that conversation around reading and books.
That's great. And there are questions in the chat about whether most of the online events that you do are private for the groups that you work with, or whether they become open to the public. I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, Liz, with the access to your Facebook group. Yeah, can you just give us a bit more information?
Yeah, sure. I mean, anybody can join the Book Chat Facebook group through the Staffordshire Libraries webpage. Anybody can ask to join. I've not yet seen any occurrences where we've said you can't join. You know, we're open and welcoming to everybody. And I think once you're in the Book Chat group, you have access to those that season of reading we're putting on and any other author events we put on. Now, we advertise all of those on our main social media pages as well. So if people spot it, and you know, on that post it says, if you'd like to take part in this event, just pop over to Book Chat and ask to join, and then you have free access to it. So it's really open to everybody. It's not a closed forum at all. I'd say it's a controlled forum, but it's not, because you need some sense of control just to make sure everything's safe, and you know, you're really supporting people and there's nothing negative going on. But at the same time, you want it to be as accessible to people as you possibly can, and that's what we aim to do.
Wonderful, thank you. And Mirka, the same with you and your libraries?
Yes, yeah, very.
Trying to give it to I suppose it's the thing of, it's a dedicated group who you're kind of promoting to, but like today, it's widened open as well. And there are library authorities from outside, obviously the West Midlands, who are saying, can we access your authors? Can we access your chats? I would say, and to round up this conversation, that all of the work that we do as a network in partnerships with the library authorities around the region, we'll always promote through the West Midlands Readers Network Twitter account, and you can find details of that under the film here in YouTube. So I would encourage to join that, and you'll find out about those open access author readings that we've been promoting, and hopefully asking those authors from the region as well, now that you don't have to pay travel expenses at the moment, to come and do something for your library authority as well. So look at those silver linings. Well, we've run out of time now here, so thank you so much for those questions in the live chat. You've answered those wonderfully, and I think you're really showing exactly what I said about innovation and participation being at the heart of what we need to be doing for our readers group as we charted through these very uncertain times. So I'd just like to say thank you so much to Liz and to Mirka for taking the time to join us this afternoon and to share their own experiences and ideas, which I know have resonated with those watching. So thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. And now our next discussion is working with readers, independent bookshops and a residency. And it's a pre-recorded interview that we're delighted to broadcast for you now. Thank you. Hello, in this session, I'm delighted to be joined by bookseller Marg Giacomelli-Harris and author Susan Fletcher. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Marg is the co-owner of Warwick Books, centrally located on Marketplace in the beautiful historic town. It's a superbly stocked 2-floor shop. So Marg, 2020 this year marks the 5th anniversary of you and Pauline running Warwick Books. Can we start by you taking us back and sharing with us the how and why of you both becoming independent booksellers? Provide us with a picture of the shop right up until the point of lockdown back in March.
Well, we're both accidental booksellers, so voracious readers and bookshop visitors since both of us since an early age, but it all sort of came about as an opportunity that we took. Pauline had just finished in France, a contract, a 5-year contract, and was sort of within a few months of 6 months of unemployment, and was France can be quite difficult to sort of make career changes. The system's quite prescribed for everything, and we both sort of thought we'd like to have a business together, and bookshop had not entered into any of our thinking. And my parents came to visit us where we were living, just next to Lille in France, and they said, oh, Keith and Frances have just sold their bookshop in Kenilworth and they're still looking for someone to buy Warwick books. And we looked at each other across the table and we bought a bookshop, which is that's pretty much how it happened. There was a little bit more thinking involved, but not a huge amount. The decision was almost made. Everything else was then sort of, checking the box to make sure that's what we wanted to do. And then steep learning curves to probably, I don't know, a year or so ago, feeling like we'd kind of got on top of understanding what this game was all about. And then comes 2020, really, which was, let's just rip up the business plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, I mean, so you were taking over a kind of an established bookshop already then? Yeah, okay. Yes. So kind of a head start, would you say, kind of a chance to talk to the previous owners, and there would have been a customer base already in town?
So Warwick is my hometown. So it was a familiar bookshop for me. There had not been my childhood bookshop in Warwick, but a familiar bookshop all the same. And Keith and Frances were the owners who established the shop at Marketplace, at 24 Marketplace. They were really helpful in getting us trained. And the Booksellers Association, publishing in general, it's a really weird business for how collaborative it is. I don't know of any other business that kind of functions in the same way, where pretty much everybody is wanting everyone else to succeed, and there's very little kind of daggers or kind of which I think was probably why I suppose the aggressive online internet selling is so at odds with the rest of the business.
Yeah, I'll come back to that actually, but I was thinking all public-facing organisations, especially retail, had to react with such lightning speed back in March when the lockdown came. How did you adapt and stay going at Warwick Books?
Well, the benefit of being independent, and it pretty much being myself and Pauline making decisions, is you can make decisions in like a few seconds, minutes. But one of the main things is when all of our publishers and wholesalers were one by one, domino effect, almost shutting and saying, look, I'm sorry, we can't get books out to you, or if we can get them, you'll probably be waiting 3-4 weeks for them. We panicked, but then we thought, you know what, well, why don't we, for as long as we can, we've got a shop full of books, why don't we have lots of different genre, why don't we offer mystery bundles and enjoy, instead of being a kind of a faceless fulfillment center, which at times we did feel like, why don't we be booksellers and sort of match people to books and allow, and lots of our customers got on board with this and really enjoyed this, and a lot of people gifted bundles to people, and they enjoyed telling us, typing or phoning us and telling us all about the people that they wanted to purchase for, and then we sort of scoured our shelves looking for the right books. So we've had some great feedback from that, and that's actually something we've continued. So that's not something that we did just for a couple of weeks, that's now something that's kind of part of what we do. So, which is great.
Having been a recipient of one of your mystery bundles, by trying to describe my reading tastes in a few lines and the authors I like, then you did the book doctor bit and provided me with my prescription of reading and sent it to me in the post. It was wonderful. So I think it's an excellent initiative, and it was a way, as you say, to utilise all the stock that you had on the shelves there around you, instead of where all the sort of supply chain had fractured so much at that time. So congratulations. We hear a lot about the plight of small venues and in the arts sector, but a little less about how independent bookshops are coping. So can you give us a sort of an insider's view, or from those colleagues that you spoke of earlier? You must all be talking to each other, and tell us how it's all going in a wider landscape.
So those of us based in market towns, in I suppose quite affluent areas, as everyone's been at home and not abroad, or kind of not at their city centres, we've kind of inherited lots of people who would be in cities, who then use us like they would have used their city bookshops at lunch, you know, their lunch break or post work, which means we know that our city bookshops are really suffering. So there's been lots of initiatives going on. There have been hardship funds. There's been lots of sort of sharing ideas, what we can do. Huge support from the Booksellers Association, the BA, trying to help. And I know actually a lot, some of the issues that are carrying on are issues concerning rent and landlords, and that's something that, depending on your circumstance, can the difference can be massive, really. We personally had very understanding landlords who were incredibly proactive. We couldn't have had better support, and we feel that we were very supported. But we've had plenty of colleagues that have had situations where, you know, it's actually got really unpleasant. And location and local arrangements have been key to survival as well. And we'll come back, but I'm just going to turn now to Susan Fletcher and provide a fuller introduction before asking my first question. Susan was born in Birmingham, studied creative writing at the University of East Anglia, and returned to make her home in the West Midlands. Her first novel, Eve Green, was published in 2004 and won the Whitbread First Novel Award and the Betty Trass Prize, and was chosen for Channel 4's Richard and Judy Summer Reading List. We often used to call them the patron saints of reading back in the day when the Richard and Judy show was going. Thankfully, many novels have followed this extraordinary successful debut, bringing us up to date with Susan's most recent, House of Glass, that was published in paperback last year. So Susan, can I start by asking you to talk about yourself as a reader, as every successful writer must be? If you could share with us a bit about your own reading habits and if they've changed at all during lockdown.
I think as a novelist, I probably have quite a strange reading habits. I think I'm probably atypical in that if I was to walk into Morgan Pauline's shop or into a library, I would probably be just as likely to go towards the non-fiction shelves as I would be towards the fiction. And for a long time, I rather kept this to myself like a dirty secret, because all my other novelist friends have such voracious appetites solely for fiction or primarily for fiction. And so you sort of get to the end of any given year, and I would imagine the list of fiction versus non-fiction would be about the same. Possibly non-fiction would tip it. So I think in that respect, maybe I'm a little bit atypical. But that would be a typical year. And of course, this has not been a typical year. I remember, as I think most people do, the press conference that the Prime Minister gave, where he said we needed to prepare ourselves to lose people that we love before their time. And I remember hearing that, and literally at that moment, both my reading and my writing stopped, and I couldn't do either. And that must just be related to anxiety. Everything I had was directed on the news. And it probably took 2 or 3 months to pick up a book again, really. And I know plenty of people for whom that was the opposite. You know, went straight into fiction. They immersed themselves in other worlds, and I have come to that later, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't concentrate enough. I would do that trick of just staring at a page and realizing 20 minutes later you're still staring at the same page. But when I did come back to reading, it was the two things I started turning to. One, in terms of fiction, it was fiction I'd read before. So it was going to the old friends. It was going to the books that I knew I loved, that would be good company, that would be easy reading, I guess. And most of them, just by chance, are also quite immersive, that set in other countries or other times. The one that I went straight to actually was The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arman, who I can't remember when she wrote that, but we're looking at 50 plus years, and it's beautiful, and it's women in this beautiful house on the Italian coast, and it's full of flowers, and it's warm and it's friendly. So I went in that direction, but I also went to nature writing heavily, and I'm not surprised. We couldn't get out. We couldn't go anywhere, and it's a big thing for me. I'm a keen walker. I'm a nature girl. I'm happiest in walking boots, and I went straight to sort of Robert Macfarlane, for example, or everything of his. And so that was the kind of writing that I started to read, but it took me a long time to get there. It was probably into the summer before I felt able to actually read properly.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because what you're saying really chimes with a report that I've just recently read. It was published at the start of October, findings by Aston University about how people's reading had changed over lockdown. And they said that people were generally reading more, but there had been as many people saying that they had lost the ability to concentrate and were sometimes making much less progress with a book that they had picked up and chosen. And that lasted for quite a while over the start of lockdown. And interesting in terms of rereading and genre choice, because they were saying that it really was split into two camps, that some people were reading far more widely, and they saw it as an opportunity to explore or go to their bookshelves and think, gosh, that's been sitting there for X number of years. I must dust that down and read it now. But there was lots of evidence of people who were seeking reading as a comfort and solace in rereading, like you said, the books that we love. Now, you've been working with the West Midlands Readers Network, with myself and with Warwick Books as partners as well, on the Reader in Residence project. Can you tell us a bit more about that, the project aims, and how you've rolled it out?
Certainly. It's a really exciting project, and I was delighted to be approached to do it. And I think one of the reasons I was so excited about it is it's very much in keeping with what I already believe. And basically the heart of this project is to encourage readers in the West Midlands area and Warwickshire area to attempt to read books they might not normally read, to widen their reading habits, to go down pathways that they perhaps might not have thought of previously. And this is very much in keeping with how I read myself. And I was in the beginning solely a fiction writer, but I have now discovered this year, for example, that I love reading about mountaineering literature. Who knew? But that going off down routes I never thought I would go down have actually really benefited me personally, and I think professionally in my writing life. So I am evangelical anyway about reading widely and trying new forms. So that's really what this project is about introducing readers to new writers, new genres, new styles, and hoping that they enjoy that experience, and that it might therefore lead off into the future and introduce them to more work down the line. I was in conversation with Mog and Pauline at Warwick Books about this project just before lockdown. And we'd had ideas with yourself as well about maybe having an evening event, about me coming into the shop and talking to customers about what they might be interested in reading for the first time. But of course, lockdown happened. None of that was possible. And we started talking again at sort of the latter half of the summer, I think it was, about how to get this back up and running now that the world felt so different. And one thing I think we all agreed on quite quickly was that Zoom and anything to do with the computer was probably going to be a no-no for us. We sort of wanted to go back to something tangible, pair right back down to what reading really is, which is holding a book and turning a page, and this beautiful act that's been the same for hundreds of years. And we talked about Zoom fatigue, about how many people at that point in July or August were ready to sort of hold a book club in that way, or what have you. So we wanted almost to go back to being old-fashioned. So I, with the help of the bookshop and yourself, Angela, and various friends who'd had clear outs during lockdown, which is very handy, I managed to get together 100 brand new or as new books that were of anything other than fiction. There we go, Mark demonstrating them. And I wrapped them all up in brown paper with string. I wanted it to have this rather sort of antique quality to it. And I managed to get a list of regular readers, book club members from Mog and Pauline. I knew of other people in the area where I live in Warwickshire that were interested in the project too. And I hand delivered. I sent these books out, and they went in with labels, handwritten labels when they knew them. Took me quite a long time to do all the wrapping up, but it was actually lovely doing something so tangible, something so, when I say basic, that sounds like a negative, but it wasn't. It felt a very simple thing to be doing all this strange time when we've been living online and living virtually, to be able to put something through someone's letterbox and say, this is a book for you to read. There was just something so simple and rewarding about doing it. So these books, they all went in with a little explanation leaflet like this and a cut-off bookmark that we're all quite pleased about. And there's a very small questionnaire in there, simply asking the reader, would you have picked this genre if it hadn't been given to you randomly? What did you think of the book? Would you read this genre again? So it's a very small questionnaire. There's stamped addressed envelopes in there as well that they're sending back to the bookshop. And come November, we will go through, hopefully, the many replies we've received back. We will be able to draw an idea of how these different books, these different genres have been received, and be able to gauge what the future is for this genre with the West Midlands and Warwickshire reading groups. So I've loved doing it. I think I should probably also say that the heart of this project is certainly to broaden people's reading habits, but I feel that since lockdown and the virus came in, there's been this other sort of underlying purpose, which is harking back to what you said earlier, Angela, this idea of books as solace, the power of having a book during a difficult time, how books are the sharing of a human experience, effectively. You know, as a writer, you hope that you can write something that the reader will respond to by going, that's how I felt. I didn't know anybody else felt that way, but this person has put it in words for me, and therefore I feel less alone. You know, I love to think that maybe just one sentence of mine might do that, because I've had that feeling as a reader. So I think this has reminded me, and hopefully reminded everybody involved, of how nourishing books are, how reassuring books are, how they provide escape, but they entertain, they educate. There's a community in reading, and I feel that's very much come to the heart of this project since lockdown.
Brilliant, yeah, absolutely. Beautifully described as well. It really is at the heart of the project, and I can't believe that our time together has just sped by, and I'm going to be bringing it to a close. So we're at the end of the session, and I can't wait to actually see the review cards, the reader reviews and the recommendations, which are going to be in Warwick Bookshop window later on in the year once those are all collected. And we'll share pictures of those and comments from readers as well on the Twitter feed, which is at WMR Network. We'll put those details available under the film now. But I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time for joining us today. And all good wishes to you as we continue in these rather times to navigate together. But thank you very much for joining us today, Mog and Susan.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mog and Susan and Angela, for that terrific conversation, a film that is shortly to go on general release, I understand. So now we're going to move on to a short discussion about funding. Obviously, we've heard about some wonderful opportunities to make projects happen with readers, But as we all know, funds are in short supply, and we often need a bit of money to make these things happen. So I'm delighted to have with me, shortly coming onto your screen, two people who will talk to us about the process of getting funding and how actually relatively easy it is. The two people we're going to be talking to are James Urquhart, who is Senior Manager, Libraries and Literature for Arts Council England, and Stella Fabridge, who is Principal Librarian, Schools and Reading for Warwickshire Library Service and for Warwickshire Schools Library Service. And I'm going to ask them to say a little bit about the world of Arts Council funding. So we're just waiting for them to join me on the screen by the power of the internet. And of course, I will carry on talking until that happens. Those of you who know me know that I can talk for England, or indeed for any home nation. And on that subject, although we're talking about the Arts Council of England, hopefully a lot of what we're talking about will be of benefit to people who are in other nations in the UK, or indeed further afield. The principles are very similar. I see Stella on the screen. Welcome, Stella. Very nice to see you.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much. And James Urquhart is about to appear. It's a very exciting moment when the Arts Council appears, presumably clutching money. Not clutching money, but actually there. James, very nice to see you.
Hello there, Jonathan. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. We can hear you both loud and clear. Okay, so just to let people know, we are running a few minutes late, but because we've had interesting conversations, we're just going to let it go. So we may finish just after 4 o'clock, but I think the extra minutes will be worthwhile. So I'm going to start by asking my two guests one by one to say a little bit about funding for readers' activities in libraries. And I'm going to start with James. James, when I was permitted to frequent the pubs and clubs of Birmingham, it was a talk that the Arts Council were very keen to fund projects in libraries. Is that true?
It's certainly true. And what I was hoping to do, Jonathan, was just talk a little... Sorry.
No, carry on. Please carry on.
Am I coming through okay?
You're coming through a slight
yeah. I was hoping to talk a little bit about... Okay. It may be because I had to join via the browser. I couldn't get the link to work, so I can try going out and coming in again if that would help.
No, I think we'll stick with you. We're hearing you clearly now.
Okay. So I was going to give a little whistle-stop context about our funding. Obviously, we try to fund. I'll be very brief, given that you're running late. We try to fund project grants to support. Historically, these have supported reading and writing activities and creative and cultural activities. What's changed for us recently is that we're keen to fund projects that deliver what our director Sue Williamson calls the librariness of public libraries, that might allow libraries to apply for reading projects, but also for wider projects that might suit some of the other universal library offers. Were you wanting me to talk more about reading in specifics?
Well, reading will be useful, but I think the people watching this broadcast will also be interested in other activities happening within libraries. And we do know that the Library Universal offers are concerned with culture more widely, not just with the cultural reading. So whatever you wish, a few minutes on that would be great, and then I'll move on to Stella.
Yeah. Well, I'll cover both. I mean, we've covered reading for quite a long time in terms of what we're able to fund through project grants, and of course the Libraries Toolkit is a good example of that. But one of the things we're keen to do is not to constrain public libraries to only feeling that they have to apply for arts and cultural activities if they want to develop their offer as public libraries. So we're in terms of reading, we're very happy to deliver. To support projects that are around developing reading activities. That might be some of the reading groups that commission local writers to explore their to enhance the reading offer that they have. It might be to offer training for librarians to support reading activities. It might be to deliver things like the Big City Read that quite a few cities have done based on their public libraries.
Okay, that's wonderful. I might now, James, just switch to Stella, and just to let people watching, we've turned James's camera off simply to save the Wi-Fi, so we get a better signal from him. There is, as we all know, a national shortage of Wi-Fi, and obviously we've come up against that this afternoon. But I'm very pleased we can both see and hear Stella Fabridge. So, Stella, you've heard a little bit from James talking about the fact that the Arts Council is increasingly interested in funding creative and cultural activities in libraries, obviously reading, but also other things as well. And I know that Warwickshire Libraries have a long, almost tradition of running projects with Arts Council funding. You've probably been the most dedicated user of Arts Council funding in the West Midlands over the last 20 years. Would you like to say a little bit about how you found that experience? Has it been relatively easy, or has it been a very difficult process?
Well, you're very generous to say that, Jonathan, and of course a lot of that has involved you as well, because we've used you as our program manager, which has been one of the best decisions we made, I think. I mean, I can't take credit for a lot of this because I inherited some very good reading festivals that we had that were actually funded by the Paul Hamlyn Foundation, which was doing a lot sort of over 10 years ago. And in 2008, when we had the National Year of Reading, we'd just come to the end of those, and we were trying to find a way to get something that was very much more library based, you know, in terms of an Arts Council funded project. And so we started with our famous Fantastic Fun with Words series, and that's been going since 2008, pretty much every year until the present. And the way we did that, as you know, was by going first of all for a 1 year trial project, if you like, and then we managed to get 2-year funding every sort of, you know, every other year, so that we could run this festival every autumn. And I think when I've been thinking about what I would say to people, I mean, most people have got very good experience themselves now in libraries of how to apply and all that kind of stuff. I think the reason we've been successful is partly that we have used an external programmer called Jonathan Davidson, who has then done the, if you like, the programming work for the whole festival, but also then helped us with the next bid for the next round of funding. And I think building that into it all has been really helpful to us, because I think what libraries always come back and say every time we talk about what we've done is, but we haven't got time to do bids. And this is really at the root of so much of our problems, if you like, and it's not going to get any easier as jobs go and so on, and specialisms go as well. So I just sort of 3 things I would say about the reason that we've managed to get funding, I think, over these years repeatedly. And we've not only had Fantastic Fun with Words, we've had Warwickshire Poetry Voices, which was extremely successful, which was about performance of poetry. And we have now got, as a follow-on to that, Warwickshire Libraries Alive, which of course is very much in abeyance during lockdown, but we hope to get back to that next year. And that is bringing groups who do not see themselves as traditional library users into libraries through the medium of all kinds of art forms, but related to literature. So it's sort of got a very much a book element. So my 3 points are: 1, make sure it's always, whatever your project is, it's always centered on the libraries themselves and reading. It's very tempting when schools say, oh, can't you come to us? Well, that's all very well, but if you go out to the schools, they don't get that this is actually a libraries project. It's about using libraries. So we've always felt it must refer very strongly back to libraries. That's the first thing. Second thing is keep the grant figure modest, and that's something you and I, Jonathan, have known from the Fantastic Fun with Words experience. We've always kept it to the 50k threshold, if you like, because, and that's been for 2 years funding. So I think we've got a lot out of that money, to be honest, in terms of visitor numbers and you know, reach. Because if you limit it to that, it's very manageable in terms of the bookkeeping side of it. You don't have to go into lots of auditing and very detailed work on that, which again libraries haven't got time to do. But you also you can make the scope of the project manageable as well. So that would be my second point. And my third would be is getting a project manager, which we've always had in you for Fantastic Fun with Words. We had Antonia Beck, who will be known to a lot of people in the West Midlands, managing the Poetry Voices, and we've currently got Nikki Stevenson running Libraries Alive. All really, really useful. And on the library side, you're just the link, you're just sort of overseeing things, but you're not having to run that every day when you've got other things to do in your job. So those are my 3 points.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much for those very salient points. Other project managers are available, of course. I will say that. But you raised some interesting points. I think the idea of keeping the funding level modest, but doing it for a number of years, which is what you've done in Warwickshire, in the long run, you get the same benefit. You don't put all your eggs into one basket, and bringing in external people, because we do know libraries are short of money. I'm going to ask a question of James that I've got, but then I know we do have at least one question coming through from the chat room. And if you are watching on YouTube and want to ask a question, then please drop it in there and we'll try and relay it to me. But my question for James is, Stella mentioned that when Fantastic Farmers Words was first being mooted by Warwickshire Libraries, they initially put in a one-year bid to kind of test the water and also to get to know the Arts Council, or for the Arts Council to get to know Warwickshire Libraries. Would you advise that? Is that a sensible thing to do, to start to build a relationship in that way, James?
Yeah, I think that's a valuable approach. What I would say is that we don't want libraries or any applicants to think that they have to have a relationship with us in order to be successful at putting in a funding application. But I think, you know, the thing coming across to me from Stella's observations were about proportionality. If you are new to the world of making funding applications, then having advice from people who have more experience and expertise in that could be really valuable. If you're seeking to put in an ambitious or a larger scale bid, then involving funding and resource for a project manager, or for those professionals who do have the expertise to help you make the project work, is really valuable. But equally, we're very welcome to see applications that might be on a more modest scale, that might be testing the waters without the need for such as a project manager. Maybe a £15,000 project for, you know, story time work with families and extending the range in that way. So we wouldn't want libraries to feel that they have to sort of jump in and commission someone such as yourself to write a polished bid. We are also very aware that actually, you know, we're guilty of using jargon. We are trying very hard to move away from arts-based jargon to being a funder that recognises that libraries and museums and some other organisations that come to us have different ways of talking about their work. So we're very keen to try and avoid the hurdles that libraries coming to us cold might see as problems for getting funding.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. That's a timely reminder, actually, that the lower limit is £1,000 for a lottery project grant, and with up to £15,000, you get the result in 6 weeks, which is a remarkably short space of time. And those of you who haven't enjoyed the pleasures of the Arts Council's Grantium portal, although it can seem ever so slightly intimidating at the start, there's a lot of support from the Arts Council. They're really very keen to make sure that libraries and people who are new to this work feel confident in making those applications. Now, James, I do have a question for you, and then I'll come back to Stella. Quick question for you. This is about the current situation regarding lottery project grants. It's from Zoe from the Folio organisation that runs Sutton Coldfield Library. She asks, can you say something, James, about applying for project grants at the moment? And her understanding is that Arts Council want to fund things which can be delivered in the next few months because they're having a review in lottery project grants taking place in April. I'm not quite sure that's the case, but I appreciate your view.
There are elements of all of that are true. In that I don't think it's what you would call a review, but next April marks the point where our delayed delivery plan, which went along with our now in process 2020 to 2030 strategy, that was published earlier this year, and it was meant to have a delivery plan that was suspended by COVID. Slight changes to the programme that we wanted to introduce this year have now been put back to April 2020, which I think is probably what Zoe's referring to. What we did manage to achieve this year is what I kind of was referring to earlier on in my comments, which was extending the eligibility that public libraries could apply for reading and for culture and creativity activities, as they always have been able to do. Excuse me. But are also now able to apply for non-arts related activities that meet the other universal library offers, such as health and well-being and digital and learning. So in terms of applying now, yes, we closed project grants for extraordinary measures to deliver the emergency funding to support arts and culture back in March. We reopened project grants later in the summer, and to try and respond to the climate and the need in the arts and cultural sector, we said with the exception of the library eligibility that I just mentioned, none of the criteria for project grants have changed, but our emphasis in what we are seeking to fund is very much on supporting activities that can be delivered for public benefit this year, as in this financial year, before the end of March, and also activities that really foreground involving freelance creative practitioners.
Right, so you're foregrounding those, but it doesn't exclude other types of projects which might extend later into the new financial year.
Absolutely, yes, and that does include things like research and development projects that might actually build to fruition after the end of the financial year.
Okay, I hope that's answered that question. Now, Stella, you had a little point to raise at that point.
What I was just going to say was it's really useful to know about smaller grants, and also that when we first started, it felt very much more intimidating to sort of talk to the Arts Council. You would sort of felt they were going to judge your bid before it had even gone in. And I think in recent years things have changed dramatically, and I think we've got very good relationship managers and so on, like James and Kate Earl, who's one of our other local ones, but we've got people here from all over the country. So, you know, if this is new to you, do go to your Arts Council person and chat through what you're planning, because they're very much more geared up to this now. And I think we've had some good workshops and so on recently and so on. And I think if libraries, you know, band together to get workshops and so on, it will help them, you know, individually to make these bids.
Yes, yes. And of course, it's also a good idea to talk to people like Stella who have had experience of putting bids in, running bids in library authorities. My experience is that everybody who's had a successful lottery project bid is more than happy to discuss the details with other people. It doesn't affect them at all. And of course, it's nice to share some of that some of that knowledge. And I know the Arts Council are very keen that successful bids, we learn from them, and even unsuccessful projects or indeed bids, we also learn from them as well. So I'm assuming, Stella, that you're willing to talk about the minutiae. Of course.
Well, yes, if I can. I honestly think people know as much as I do, but always happy to
okay.
Yes.
And for those of you in the West Midlands, Writing West Midlands, which is the organisation that I work for and but works with West Midlands Readers Network, we are very happy to talk about lottery project grants pertaining to literature, creative writing, reading, and so on. We're less good on the health and other aspects, but we do know quite a bit about actually shaping bids. And I know there are similar colleagues, similar friends around the country from the other literature development agencies and sometimes other library groupings who've got sort of experts within their field. It's looking like we haven't got any more direct questions at the moment, and actually we're a few minutes over time, but we have made up a little bit of time. So it's my great pleasure to thank James and Stella for sharing their time and their observations about funding for library activities in England, and to say, as I said earlier, that if you are from outside of England, I think the principles are very similar in other home nations and quite possibly similar in other countries, which is to understand what your funder is looking for and get to know how to communicate effectively with them, and if you don't know where to go, ask questions. So thank you again to Stella and James. We'll let you disappear by the magic of the internet, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
So, goodbye. So we're on to our next presentation, and this is our second one, which has been recorded in advance. It is with the wonderful Nikki B, who is a long-standing literature development entrepreneur. She's worked in libraries, but also currently she's now part of the Civic Square project in Birmingham, and she's in conversation with the irrepressible Simon Savage, whose many roles include working for Libraries Connected as their project manager for the BBC Novels That Shaped Our World Library Partnership. And I've seen the director's cut of this film, and it's very informative and enjoyable, and I know you will enjoy it. So I hope you sit back and enjoy the next 20 minutes of conversation about why libraries and readers are so wonderful.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Librarians Toolkit, which for the first time ever is online, it's virtual. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Simon Savage, who some of you may know on social media as Savage Reads. I'm Nikki B. I used to work for Birmingham Libraries for many years, hence me hosting this conversation. I'm now programming and participation lead at Civic Square, formerly known, I feel like Prince, formerly known as Impact Hub Birmingham. Our conversation today is going to be very loosely based on, I think what I can say for both of us, Simon, our passion for books and reading and libraries. And I was going to say all things in between, but I think we probably would be here for hours if we talked about all things in between. So it's some things in between. So Simon, if you could just introduce yourself to those people who may not know who you are.
Yeah, I'm Simon Savage, and as Nikki said, I am also in some realms known as Savageries because I do YouTube and Bookstagram and all those kind of things. But I also work for Libraries Connected, where I am the project manager for the BBC Novels That Shaped Our World Libraries programme, which has been an interesting experience with everything going on. That's how I'll put it. But yeah, and as Nikki was saying, massive fan of books, massive fan of libraries. Yeah, a big passion of mine.
Cool. That leads on really well into my first question. You know, both of us, we worked in libraries, so and I think you probably mentioned this on your blogs and you know, you're on social media about how you got into books and reading. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit about how, you know, books have made it for you.
Well, books have kind of, it's interesting. So as a kid, I was really booky, and that was partly thanks to my mum, because, well, my gran and my mum were both voracious readers. But my mum had me when she was very young and took me to university with her. I was 3 and she was 19, I think. And so the library was a place where she would study and I would escape into books. And that was it. Like from then on, I kind of always had a book in my hand, but it was always very much libraries. We didn't have very much money, so it would always be like Waterstones or any other bookshop was like a real treat, like to be able to go and buy a new book. So that was kind of where my love of books and reading and libraries came from. And then weirdly, I had a really big blip after GCSE. I left school and didn't pick up a book again for about 8 years. And then in my 20s, my friend Polly gave me, I was going in to have an operation. She gave me 2 books, and one was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and one was The Surgeon by Tess Gerritsen, which is about a psychopathic surgeon. You don't want to read that before you're having an operation. So I turned to Rebecca, and it was like, the only way I can describe it, it was like fireworks started going off in my head. And this love of books just, well, that was it. It's created a monster.
A monster we love, definitely.
What about you?
I think for me, growing up, we came from a very kind of low-income family, so I cannot stress the lifeline that our local library was. And at the time, I lived in Sandwell in the West Midlands, and Smethwick Library, I have to big up Smethwick Library, was our lifeline. I mean, I don't know how we got to the library, but literally, you know, when people talk, it sounds very cliched about how you can live, you know, 1,000 lifetimes and travel the world without actually leaving your own house.
Yeah.
You know, the book's there. And I think one step prior to that, I had a whole year off school because I was unwell, and I had a teacher at home, and somehow this teacher had found a budget of £100, and in the 80s £100 could have been like £1 million. And I remember her taking me into Birmingham city centre, going to what was then Hudson's, I believe, which was the oldest bookshop in Birmingham, now taken over by Waterstones. And we spent £100 on books, and it was books like, you know, Anne of Green Gables and, you know, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and all of those things that, you know, a 12, 13-year-old reads in the 80s. And I think it's just from there. And now you can see my kind of bookshelf behind me. You know, I always have this saying, a house is not a home if you don't have books in it. So for me, there's something about the books, the comfort they provide, this escapism, all of those things that, you know, we hear readers say what, you know, books and libraries do. So I'm a massive champion, like yourself, of libraries. So I was with Birmingham Libraries for, 17 years. And I know you were with Liverpool for quite a while. So can you talk a little bit about what your role was there, and how do you think libraries have changed since you joined the world of libraries, and where they are now?
Yeah, I should say, actually, I'm in a hotel at the moment. Normally you would have like a whole room of bookshelves behind me. So my game should have been upped. I apologise that I've been travelling. But now, in terms of Liverpool Library, so I started there 3 or 4 years ago, and my role was kind of commercialisation, looking at areas that the library could make money, but also bringing in a lot more events with authors and just with engagement. Because I think the one thing that I think has been taken away recently is engagement, but ironically, that's the most important thing with the library. A service needs to engage with the public, otherwise they're not going to go. So that was where I was involved. So it was like looking at things like, could we put a shop in? Could we create merchandise? Could we have, you know, and we did. And what was really good was, I mean, it was fascinating, and it's sort of become a bit of a mission of mine. I think the publishing industry and libraries are a little bit like that, and I think they need to be a lot more like that. And that, I thought, having been in the publishing industry before I went into libraries, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. We're going to be able to get loads of authors to come to libraries, and it's much, much trickier. I think really it feels to me like there are so few members of staff compared to what there were, and there is so little time compared to what there was, and it's much more about budgets, and it's much more about, which obviously it has to be, it's a business at the end of the day. But I think what I feel has been lost slightly is the reader development and getting librarians to be, you know, I have booktube channels, so therefore I'm called an influencer, but actually librarians are influencers. They are local influencers, and that's way more important than, I think, than some of the bigger influencers. And I feel like that's been lost, not because, I don't want to make it sound like librarians don't want to do this, but they don't have the time they used to have. Like, if you went and asked a librarian at the moment, like, oh, I'd like a recommendation on it, they're probably thinking about, like, right, I've got to get this here, then I need to sort out this rota here, we've got this amount of, you know what I mean? I think that's where it's changed. I think it's lost. There are some superstars out there who are doing it on top of their jobs, but I think it's really hard now when your job as a librarian has changed. I mean, I was never a librarian with a big L, it was always a librarian with a little L, but that's where I think it's changed. I think through no fault of anyone other than Cuts, I think some of the relationship building has probably gone a little bit.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, when I left Birmingham Libraries, I think 5 or 6 years ago, our whole job, we were part of the engagement team, and you know, the work that you're talking about, you know, where you did that reader development work, that was all cut. And I just thought to myself, I can understand why, because we had cuts in Birmingham, you know, huge cuts, and then it was easier for the local authority just to cut the engagement stuff than the statutory stuff that as a library service you need to provide. But yeah, that I totally understand where you're coming from. And I think when I left, a lot of the colleagues who stayed on were doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people, and it's really hard to give that kind of dedicated time to readers and people who are coming in. And also I think, you know, libraries on a local level are changing in terms of their roles. You mentioned earlier on that you've joined Libraries Connected. How does that role differ with your role that was at Liverpool? And how do you think that we can make libraries more of a priority on the government agenda?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, in terms of Libraries Connected, so I feel like the luckiest person ever, because I was working for 19 libraries before. Now, technically, I'm working for 55 services. So like, well, and really actually it was being part of Libraries Connected, all the services, but particularly with BBC Novels. So I get to basically work with the most amazing people who, what I love about the Novels Project, for those of you who don't know what it is that it came from the list of 100 novels chosen by a wonderful panel of judges, authors, broadcasters, the whole shebang. And the Arts Council created some money so that we could then get libraries to bid so that they could put on events. And honestly, the joy when I got the first list of like all the different events that were happening when I started, I just couldn't, like, it was so joyous to see, like, you've got libraries that are putting on a version of Swallows and Amazons on their river. You've got like libraries who are turning their library into a space to create pottery for people with Alzheimer's, to put memories literally in a jar. I mean, it's just, these stories are just incredible. So that for me has been a real treat, because also I think what's great about a project like Novels and getting the Arts Council to fund it in that way is, one, it shows how brilliant libraries can be with money, because they make money go really far. Like Merton have got events coming up, and with £1,000 they've managed to put on, I think it's 9 events now, which is just like, that's phenomenal. And I think also how they've, like, libraries have looked at working with partners. So one of the libraries is partnering with the Women's Prize, and that to me has just been so exciting. And what I'm really hoping by the end of the project is that we'll have some video footage which will say, if you give libraries money, look at what they can do, like across the board, they can do incredible things. And the other bit that I think is really important with the project is because it's very much about getting people into libraries who wouldn't normally, or getting people to pick up a book who might not normally. It's very emotive. Like, there is a joke at work that I cry at every single event, and if I don't cry, they have to give their money back. But it's very easy. So, you know, when I went to Norfolk, it was people were coming in to tell the staff their novels that shaped their world. And like, one guy brought his wife in who had Alzheimer's, and it was one of the most emotional moments, because she started to remember certain things about books, and things like that are just, but we need to capture that, because actually I think the emotional narrative of that plus the power of what libraries do, that's what government need to see, and I don't think at the moment they are.
Totally. You know, we know what the cuts of libraries have been to people, you know, in the elderly community who are quite isolated, who can't get to the centre of town, to the main library, and their local library is, you know, their lifeline. So the BBC Novels That Shaped Our World started in at the beginning of the year, and it's supposed to end in October. Is that still on schedule, or?
No.
I didn't think it was. I thought.
Not at all. Well, we're very lucky. Like, I was quite worried. Obviously, the pandemic is horrific and has been horrific on so many levels. But at first, you know, we carried on because I was a bit blasé and going, I'm sure it'll pass, let's just keep going. And then obviously we couldn't. So thankfully, the Arts Council and BBC have been brilliant. And I spent about a month and a half rescheduling pretty much the whole thing to run until June 2021, but without any extra budget. So that was quite a mission. But what we've managed to do is we have managed to extend it. We've managed to add 10 more library services. And by the end of it, I think actually it will be, I don't know if everyone else is on this page at the moment, but I'm at the point now where I'm trying to see the positives of the pandemic, because it's been so negative and so horrific. But for me, I think showing what libraries have done when a pandemic hits will be really powerful. Because, you know, they've you know, it has been a struggle, let's not pretend it hasn't, but the way they've responded and the way, you know, library staff have shown how resilient they are, how, you know, multifaceted they are, how flexible they can be with, you know, a lot of them have been put into other roles that wouldn't necessarily be theirs, but they've adapted straight away. And I think that is really key. I think using the Novels Project to bring people back into libraries safely, as it is safe to do so, is really, really important. So it was a horrible month or two, and there was a bit where I thought, oh, I've just taken this job on, am I going to lose it? I was quite nervous, but, you know, the team there are amazing, and the BBC and Arts Council are so supportive. So yeah, it has been a time, that's how I will put it, but we're in a really, really good position now. And actually, I think it's meant that the libraries have adapted in a different way, and I think the events that they will be putting on have actually even more power in terms of getting to people who are isolated or who are shielding, even though obviously people have been told they don't have to shield anymore, people still sort of do, and also bereaved people as well. That's a really, really key part of the project, sort of in 3 to 4 months time.
No, it sounds brilliant, and the fact that you've added 10 more libraries onto that project when there's no additional money, fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing which libraries. I was kind of having a quick Google beforehand, thinking, where can I find out which libraries? I mean, I know you've mentioned some already, and I thought, who are the libraries who are involved? Are there any in my area? So,
we're going to do a list, but also what the other thing that we're doing as well is, because one of the big parts of the project was virtual reality, and obviously I don't think anyone's going to want to share a headset for ever. So we're actually now creating sort of digital library tours as well, which will be part of it as well with authors, which I think again reminds people the power of putting an author with a library audience together. That's really, really important, and I think that gets forgotten actually. I think in the grand scheme of publishing and sometimes the political side of libraries, people forget that actually really it's about the author and the reader. They're the two most important people. Without libraries, you don't get new authors. Without libraries, you don't get new readers. You might not get new content creators. You might not get all sorts of things.
I just want people to go and borrow books. I mean, I don't know what's happening in libraries in terms of budgets and whether they've been able to, because obviously there was a period of time local libraries were closed. In Birmingham, I think a lot of the libraries recently reopened in the middle of October. And it's like book browsing, you book in advance and, you know, do all of those things you need in terms of, you know, social distancing and precautions. You've mentioned a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted on programming and delivery. Has it pushed everything back? In some instances, it's great, you've pushed it to next year, so there'll be more events going on. You know, have you seen kind of an impact on?
I have. There's multiple impacts, I think, and I think there's negatives and positives to both. So I'll do the negatives because I always like to end on the positive. So the negative is, it was amazing how many more people joined libraries during lockdown. That was phenomenal. The amount of e-memberships was just fantastic. The negative of that was people aren't aware that every ebook probably cost the library up to £40, as opposed to what you'd think it would be like $7.99 or possibly $1.99, like on a certain website, which we won't name. That was financially actually crippling for quite a lot of libraries. I mean, we worked with the Arts Council to get every single library service as Libraries Connected, not we as in me personally, £1,000 to spend on ebooks. That actually doesn't go very far. I mean, it was great and it was helpful, but it you know, we wanted DCMS to give us 3 million. So I think that's something that people have forgotten, is that yes, it's brilliant. What I think is great that's come out of that is this new, I used to feel that libraries were a little bit scared of digital. And now it seems like libraries have, it's shown some amazing rising stars. It's shown how libraries can adapt even in certain ways, which I think is amazing. So those two things are kind of real sort of, there is a big negative in the potential that could cost, but we're currently, as Libraries Connected, working on a project to see if we can start to have a different conversation with publishers about that, and working on models that will mean that yes, the library will buy a bulk amount of their physical and digital books, but actually there'll be lots of benefits from publishers to the library and to library users. I think where libraries can play a blinder next year is that we've had that Super Thursday where, was it nearly 600 books got released in one day? That's probably going to happen. Well, it happened again in this month, and it will happen again throughout the spring. And what we're saying to publishers is, you've got a massive audience in libraries where you can push these books out in a different way. And that again is really exciting. So I think it's, we have to be frank and say, you know, you don't want to turn members away from libraries. The whole point is for them. But I think the powers of B need to understand the cost of that when it comes in, but also keep on with it. Like, I think it's been really nice to see councils are slowly being more free with their social media for libraries. That's been a big change. And that sounds like such a small basic thing, but it's massive if your librarians are actually allowed to do the social media for their own library branch.
I know. I mean, I've got a shout out to Orkney Libraries. They've got one of the best library Twitter accounts.
And I think there will be some positives that come out like that. I mean, I just think as well, we've been talking about where is the awards for librarians? Like, you get like the Library of the Year with the bookseller, but actually, why have we not got something that celebrates certain, you know, accomplishments that librarians have? Or, you know, we've been doing quite a lot with a series of webinars called Black Stories Matter for Libraries Connected, and we have met so many librarians through that who have gone the extra mile to make sure indie publishers are included in their library because they know their audience want it. We've had some amazing feedback on authors and how they would feel about, actually, you know, you've got to remember that it's about diversity as a whole. You can't go thinking, right, well, because this big thing is going on in the world, we need just those books. It's about actually a much more intricate look at everything, and what diversity might mean to me as a white gay man is very different to a black woman, or, you know what I mean? And I think that's proving really interesting. And what I love is, again, with the library community, these debates and discussions are happening politely. There's no shouting. We're not kind of just screaming at each other. It is genuinely an honest, open, frank, sometimes quite difficult, but powerful conversation. And that's what library should be.
I think we may just end it on there, Simon.
It's a lovely note to end it on, and it's been a really lovely conversation. Thank you so much, Nikki.
I know, you're welcome. So
I'm not used to being interviewed. It's normally the other way around.
Thank you so much to Simon Savage and to Nikki B for that fantastic discussion. I'm thinking about what Simon said about all library staff as local influencers. So true. Now I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming our next session, which is the New Stories for Readers. And I'm Julie Taylor from St Mary's Reading Group in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Hello.
Hello, and author Abda Khan. Welcome to you both. It's so nice to see you back on Zoom where we met before.
Yes. That's right.
It's great to be here. Great to be here.
Hi, Abda. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Julie.
I'd like to start with Abda because I absolutely love the story of how you joined your reading group, Abda. And I understand it's because you were invited by them to speak about your novel.
Yes.
and you enjoyed being with the group so much that you've joined them. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, I met Mandy at we were both speaking at a Writing West Midlands Writers Conference, and we just got chatting, and Mandy said she was thinking of setting up a book group, and she said, "Oh, would you like to come and just speak as an author? We'll sort of read your book for the first session." And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to." And I went along, and obviously the ladies had read the book, and we discussed a lot of the themes in the book, and I really enjoyed myself so much that I joined the reading group, and yeah, we've been going strong, and our reading group has also taken part in this project, which is lovely, because I've seen it from both angles, as a writer and also as a participant of the book group as well. So it's been really, really lovely.
Yeah, we'll come back to that, Abda, and I'm going to ask Julie now. Can you tell us a little bit more about your own reading group and actually what it means to be part of a reading group?
Well, it's fantastic being part of a reading group, because it's so much more than just that. There are so many peripheral things that go on as well. But we have this tremendous focus on the book and the reading itself, because it's so important to have an outlet for discussing things, and I think it gives a real focus to the group, and we can debate the book, love it or hate it, and really have a very, very good discussion around that. We started 5 years ago, so this is our celebration year this year, which has been a wonderful time to be working with Abda, and it's been a really great project for us.
Oh, that's lovely. And what's the impact of lockdown been on your group?
Well, we've done quite well meeting in the garden. It's been very cold at times, but it's much preferable, as much as we all love Zoom, it's so much nicer to be together in the garden. And so we've wrapped up and we've had hot water bottles, etc. But our next meeting will be on Zoom, but we have kept going, and I think one of the things about a good reading group is to have the discipline and the commitment and the wanting to do it, and if you've got all those things, then I think you keep going. But it's been lovely to have the focus of working with Abda as well, because that's been increased our motivation, so that's been really good.
Yeah, let me provide a quick overview of what the New Stories for Readers annual project is, for those listening and watching. So reading groups from across the West Midlands region apply to take part, and 5 groups are chosen. And then 5 writers are invited to participate in the project as well. And the group and the writer are matched. They meet to discuss short story ideas. So themes, settings, characters, maybe some anecdotes from the group that they might want to put in there as well, to get a sense of the group, and to tailor then a story of between about 3,000 and 4,000 words to those ideas and the things that the writer picks up. So a bespoke short story. And then they're all going to be collected together in anthology. So all those meetings were set up, ready to go back in March and April. And then, of course, we needed to rethink. We did put the project on pause for a little while, but then decided what we needed to do is just approach it differently to adapt. Some groups weren't able or didn't want to, and I think this is important to say, didn't want to meet online. They didn't feel that that was a way for them to go forward. So the author wrote a series of questions, almost like a survey, to collect ideas. But others, like Julie, who leads her group, were able to bring some of the group together online. So Julie, can you tell us a little bit more about that involvement and being part of the project and those steps that you've been through?
Yes, it was rather nice actually, because we had some questions as well as arranging to meet on Zoom. We had some questions from you and from Abda before, and some ideas of what we might want to discuss. And that led us to have a great debate about really what's important when you're reading a book. What is it you're really looking for to get out of that book? And we set out, I think, a very difficult challenge, because our group as a whole decided that we don't actually like short stories very much. And the reason for that was that we really enjoy languishing in a longer book, perhaps, seeing the characters develop and the plot develop. And you, Angela, recommended some further reading for us to try and get us more involved, perhaps, with short stories. And we picked up Why Don't You Stop Talking off the list of books you supplied. So all that was going on, as well as the main focus, which was Abda writing this story for us. And I think it gave us I gave us a lot of motivation to get on, read more short stories, so on, so on. And Abda then knew that perhaps it wasn't something that we would, it made it more difficult, I think, knowing that. But that's what we like to do as a reading group, challenge ourselves, try different things, look at genres we don't particularly think we enjoy. So the whole process was extremely good and quite exciting, I have to say. But we missed not seeing Abda at the meeting, where we had lots of discussions planned. But I think we've done very well under the circumstances. I think Abda's done exceptionally well.
Yeah, well, we set Abda the challenge too, because Abda, you don't normally write in short form either. So can you tell us a bit more?
No, not very often, no. I have done the odd short story, but I a bit like Julie says, how they enjoy that the development that goes on with reading a long form piece of fiction like a novel. I really enjoy the process of writing a novel, because I'm writing my next novel at the moment, and I'm really enjoying the process of developing the characters and the themes. I actually think it's harder to write short fiction, and perhaps that's why I don't write as much of it. But I really enjoyed writing this story, and I tell you why I enjoyed writing this story. It's because I met the women, albeit on Zoom, but they gave me a lot of inspiration for this story. The group are sort of lively and zesty, sort of gorgeous women, and I just took that, their sort of enthusiasm and their, gorgeousness. And I hope I put that into the story, and I hope that, the story reflects some of them in some way. I mean, I didn't want to just, transport, the book group into the novel per se, but I wanted to take some sort of, characters and themes and issues that I saw within the group, and kind of put those within the characters within the novel, really, within the story, really, within Veritas. Yeah.
You never know, it might grow to be a novel one day. You just
that's true.
It could grow, absolutely. So then obviously I shared the story with Julie, and she was incredibly patient. She didn't read it straight away. She waited till she had a group meeting with the St Mary's group and shared it that way. And you read round, I understand, Julie.
It was lovely. We had a page each, and so it was like a slow reveal. It was really, the tension was building. If Abda could have been there, it would have been wonderful. And it was out in the garden. It was a beautiful day, but it was cold. And there was something really bonding about reading the book in that way. And I was really pleased that I managed not to read it, as tempting as it was beforehand. And so as each person read a page, we got more and more involved in the story, and we absolutely loved it. It made us smile. It was really just hit the spot for us. I don't know how Abda did it, but she really gave us something quite special, and I want to thank her for that, because it was just great, really great.
That's wonderful. And of course, you mentioned earlier, Abda, that you're seeing the project from both sides, with your reading group as well. The wonderful local writer Lynn Voice was chosen to be matched with yours. And I have to say, I've got the story on my computer, ready to share with your reading group really soon. So tell me what it was like being part of a reading group, knowing that your ideas were going to be feeding in the way that you were also on the reverse side of the coin.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing it from both sides. So I'm really excited about the story. I can't wait to read Lynn's story, see what she's written. But yeah, that was really interesting. We had a really long discussion with Lynn in our group about what's important to us. So with St Mary's group, I understood that their friendship's really important, and kind of like having a common purpose, but being comfortable in each other's company, so being able to disagree. So that came out for me as I was interacting with them as a writer, but then obviously it was reversed when we were speaking to Lynn. So it was just conveying what was our group about. So our Nisan Nashim reading group is a bunch of Jewish and Muslim women, and we come together and we alternate books. We choose 1 month we'll choose a book by a Muslim female author, and then the following month we'll choose one by a Jewish female author. And it's just exploring what makes us the same, what makes us different, and how we can embrace each other's differences in such a positive way. So really, I suppose the thing that came out was it's like a sisterhood of humanity, really. It's just about justice, fairness, and you know, it's a very touchy thing, isn't it, the Jewish-Muslim thing? Because obviously you can hardly avoid things like, you know, the conflicts that happen in the Middle East and things like that. So we're aware of the conflicts that exist between these different groups of people, but we're also aware about all the wonderful things that we have in common and all the things that we share. And I think we just wanted Lynn to bring out the positivity of what we do and what we share. And I think she's going to do a really, really good job. You know, she really got what we were about, and I think that's wonderful. And we explained that we didn't want it from necessarily from a religious perspective. We just wanted the story to reflect sort of like why we get together and why the group is so important to us.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad. It sounds like it's been an incredibly enriching project for both of you, which is exactly what any project manager wants from the outset. So thank you. Just to say that the other writers involved are the historical writer Carolyn Kirby, Leslie Scase, who is a Victorian crime writer. I've mentioned Lynn Voice, and also Emma Pursehouse, who's known as a short story writer and a poet. And both Lynn and Emma had stories very recently in a fantastic anthology called Common People, edited by Kit Duval. So Julie, you know your group just got into short story.
Yes, I'm going to write that down.
Common People, Kit Duval. Always on the list.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to bring this session to a close and say thank you so much to Julie and to Abda for taking the time to join us in the session today. We've been warmed by your enthusiasm and your advocacy for being part of a reading group, who I would say really are the backbone of the book industry. So thank you both.
You're very welcome.
For joining us.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I'll add my thanks to Julie and Abda for that wonderful conversation with Angela. And it really is so important to know that allowing readers to get involved in the process of making literature is alive and well in the West Midlands. In fact, that particular scheme to allow Readers Group to commission their own short stories has been going for over 10 years. Funded by the Arts Council. We're very grateful for that funding, and it's involved a lot of emerging and established writers from the West Midlands working with readers groups, and all of them have said it's really empowering to suddenly be directly connected with the people they want to serve. Empowering and sometimes frightening. So we now come to our final contributor for this afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome Catherine Mann, who's just joined me on screen here. So Catherine is Libraries and Arts Manager for Staffordshire Libraries and Arts Service. She's currently lead for the reading offer of the Universal Libraries offer for Libraries Connected. She'll probably unpack that a bit. I may have confused it slightly. And she's an active member of Libraries Connected in the West Midlands. We asked Catherine to watch the proceedings this afternoon on YouTube. She's now jumped out of the YouTube watching phase and is now in the reflecting on what she's watched phase. So we've asked her to come and say a bit about her experience, what she's gathered from hearing people talk today, what we can take away. I'm going to leave her with one question, which is, Catherine, are there reasons to be cheerful? And I'll see you in a few minutes' time.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. Yes, we've got to be cheerful, I think. And it has been an absolutely fabulous afternoon hearing about so many different and creative ways that we can continue to engage with readers. So huge thank you to all of our speakers, and also to Jonathan and Angela for facilitating such a brilliant event and also curating such an interesting programme. As Isabel said at the outset, especially as we do start a period of stricter COVID restrictions, working with readers has never been more important. So what I'm going to try and do, which I think is going to be quite tricky, is sum up the afternoon and propose some possible ways forward for public libraries across the West Midlands and beyond, so that we do have a more positive future and reason to be cheerful to focus on, rather than the next 4 weeks. So Isabel Hunter, Chief Executive of Libraries Connected, opened the discussions briefly outlining some of the opportunities presented to libraries for working with readers as a result of the pandemic. These included the power of reading, powered by libraries. Isabel shared some statistics with us which showed how reading connected people during the lockdown. E-lending, as we know, has surged and by an incredible 146%, which has attracted new members and new audiences. Libraries have been really innovative in engaging people digitally, but what will the challenges be ahead? And I'm sure we can all think of many. Liz Gardner from Staffordshire Libraries and Merca Duxbury from Shropshire Libraries talked with Angela from West Midlands Network and shared with us how libraries have worked with readers and supported reading groups during lockdown under these new restrictions. They described how groups have responded and how libraries have stayed in touch. And this included a discussion about our digital and online offers and the different platforms that we're using, how we've worked with the West Midlands Readers Network and other partners to develop audiences and plan for the future. We then heard from Mog, an independent bookseller in Warwick, a bookshop that I think we would all love to be visiting at the moment. And I really love how Mog and Pauline matched people with books, which is something we as librarians also enjoy. Susan Fletcher then shared with us her reading habits and how the pandemic has impacted on not only her reading, but also her writing. I think that several of us will share that sense of comfort in books that are familiar to us. And I'm also one of the people that have read less during COVID. So I was interested to hear from Angela about the Aston University research. Even more fascinating was hearing about Susan's residency with Warwick Books and the concept of books as solace, books that nurture, books that comfort, and books that entertain. James from the Arts Council and Stella from Warwickshire Libraries then talked us through some examples of funded projects, how best to present an idea to Arts Council for funding. And that included the appointment of an external programme manager, which helps us build capacity, and also getting advice from our regional relationship managers and also other library colleagues who've had successful Arts Council bids. Simon Savage from Libraries Connected and also Nikki B shared a really interesting conversation with us about how books and libraries have shaped their lives. And then finally, to conclude the afternoon, writer Abda Khan and also Stratford-based reading group member Julie Taylor discussed with Angela the New Stories for Writers project. And I particularly liked the idea of garden-based reading groups, especially with hot water bottles, and also how reading groups challenge themselves to read more widely. So to sum up, I think we will all have learned a lot from the session this afternoon. And I think above all, it has given us a glimmer of hope of a world beyond COVID. So in terms of a way forward for public libraries in the West Midlands and beyond, I think we need to consider and develop the following, and I'm afraid this is a list of bullet points. So sharing innovative ways to engage with readers in sessions such as this, looking at how we can reconnect and remarket the library offer post-COVID, how we can reinforce the positive message about libraries, taking libraries and taking the library service out into the community to support the most vulnerable, ensuring that our collections are diverse, continuing to develop our online activities, which could include hybrid events, and so that we could then potentially create a network of author events, linking authors and library activities across the whole of the UK. I think we need to look at how we share the learning about Arts Council funding, as several library authorities are successful in attracting this, and how do we learn from them. I think using reader development to influence and engage with readers, particularly people who would not normally use libraries, I think is something that we need to do more of. And then raising awareness with the government about the impact of reading and libraries, particularly during the pandemic. there is a huge amount to think about, and I suggest that perhaps people attending share their thoughts and their suggestions with their West Midlands Readers Network rep, their regional rep on the books and the Libraries and Connected Books and Reading Group, or with their head of service, so that we can take some of these ideas forward and really learn from what I think has been an absolutely fabulous afternoon. So thank you very much, Jonathan and Angela.
Well, Catherine, thank you for that. That was a simply superb summary of what we've seen, and you timed it absolutely wonderfully. And I think you've reminded us both that there are wonderful things happening, but also, and I say this to all friends, there is so much work to be done, particularly in the current situation. But as we heard from many speakers, including you summing up, there are lots and lots of people wishing us well in libraries, and those are involved in the wider industry of books and reading. There is a general groundswell. Reading and books is the art form, but actually, sadly, happily works best in a pandemic situation, and we've learned that we're very, very flexible. So thank you, Catherine, for your contribution, and I'll just say a few words now to sum up, and I welcome Angela back on the screen. So we've come to the end of our event. I understand the full video will be available shortly on the West Midlands Readers Network YouTube channel, which I'm told rivals Netflix in terms of popularity, whatever Netflix might be. So, Angela, do you have any final announcements you'd like to give to our people who are watching?
Really just to say a thank you to the audience for providing us with a much larger audience figure than we initially anticipated ever being able to draw together. So it goes to prove that there's a continued desire to talk about these really important issues and to share ideas and the concerns across the sector that we're all part of, that we all love. And I just want to come back to a few things that Susan Fletcher said about reading, that books are the sharing of a human experience. They're nourishing, they're reassuring. Books can offer us solace, and I really hope that that's the case for all people watching as we go forward in these uncertain, or as we said in the title, interesting times. Stay informed about what we're up to in the Readers Network. Our website and Twitter details are in the description below this film. You'll also have my email through the Eventbrite correspondence as well. So if you do have questions that you felt were left unanswered during the afternoon, please do get in touch and we'll respond as best we can. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Angela. So I'd like to finish by thanking all our contributors and thanking you who've joined us watching on YouTube. As Angela said, we've had, well, up to treble or 4 times the number of people we'd expected to have in a real space event. It's really been wonderful to connect with so many people. This event has been a joint promotion with Libraries Connected, both Libraries Connected nationally in London, of course, and Libraries Connected in the West Midlands, and we're very grateful for their support. West Midlands Readers Network has received regularly funding from Arts Council England. We've been doing the lottery project grants, and we are very grateful for Arts Council's continued support. We are also grateful for all the public library authorities, or our members of the West Midlands Readers Network, for encouraging their staff to join in and watch these kind of transmissions, but also for doing all the work you are doing on the ground in public libraries. And a few final notices before I go. So this broadcast was brought to you by Writing West Midlands on behalf of the West Midlands Readers Network. Our producer with the stopwatch was Olivia Chapman. Our Zoom manager with the technical know-how was Hefan Creaney. Our YouTube manager with the warm welcome was Bronia Hennessy. Co-hosting was the wonderful Angela Hickin. I've been Jonathan Davidson, and so goodbye.